That was the best intro we've ever done. Let's do it again. I'm going to put on my radio voice. Are you ready?
CreepGeeks Podcast is an offbeat news podcast that takes a lighthearted approach to the paranormal, supernatural, cryptid, strange, the silly, and trending tech topics circulating the web. We broadcast weekly paranormal news and fun stories from our underground bunker in the mountains of western North Carolina. Be sure to follow for more.
So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast, episode number 197.
Cosmic Fast Radio Burst Message Translation exclusive. Happy it's in the genes and SkinWalker Ranch.
Yeah. So here we are again. Welcome to the CreepGeeks Podcast. If this is your very first time tuning in to the podcast, we're glad to have you here. And if you're a repeat offender and listen all the time, you are very much appreciated.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some stuff to talk about, including we have an exclusive.
Ooh.
Yeah. You know those cosmic fast radio burst messages that keep showing up ever so often at NASA and astronomers and radio telescope people? I don't know what you call those things.
Scientists.
Scientists. You know, they catch these like microwave radio transmission bursts every so often, and they repeat, right? And they're coming from space.
Yeah.
From like... Anyway, we'll talk about it in a second. But anyway, these messages until as of lately have never been translated.
Oh.
And so what I did was I actually got the transmissions or a couple snippets of the transmissions and was able to use my super powerhouse laptop computer to determine what they actually are.
Oh.
Yeah. So the choice is yours. Do we go ahead and tell people what the radio burst transmissions are and give them a little bit of information, or do we just play it and then tell them what it are? What do you think? Do we tell them what it is and what it's all about, or do we go ahead and play it and then talk about it? That's the choice that you have to make, Omi. And I'm Greg, by the way, and we are your hosts of the CreepGeeks Podcast.
Yes, we are. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and play it. See how that works? Okay, so let's talk about the radio burst, the cosmic radio burst, and its source of where it comes from. Because it comes from somewhere out in space, right?
Uh-huh.
So astronomers have been able to receive some of these cosmic signals, and they don't really know what actually causes the powerful but fleeting fast radio bursts that zip across the universe. But what they have found is recently they've been able to sort of pinpoint the location of where they're coming from. Okay. Yeah. So what scientists have known so far is that these energetic pulses, which they've been called fast radio bursts, they've been going on for about 13 years now, and there's been some research done, and they've been able to kind of come across a way to explain it to us and give us more information about it, right? Mm-hmm. This is kind of recent. It's like, so they take these vast radio bursts, and they believe they're coming from a magnetar, which is a neutron star. It has a much stronger magnetic field than ordinary neutron stars. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you take some of these space telescopes and you basically point them at this area where it comes from, you can record them. And there's even one of these things on the International Space Station.
Oh.
Yeah. So far, until recently, these fast radio bursts have only been seen coming from outside of our galaxy. But they happen so fast that they're only like a couple milliseconds long that they couldn't be tracked. Yeah. So... they actually found one that was rare and considerably weaker than the burst coming from inside the Milky Way galaxy. And there was these two telescopes that actually sort of found this thing, so they were spotted, right? One's at McGill University, and the other one's, I'm not sure what the other one is, but they have nicknames, right? Yeah. So you have the McGill University, and it's their $20 million high-tech observatory. And then you have what they call the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, CHIME.
Oh.
Yeah.
So and I've heard CHIME referenced in other articles about this. Now I know what it is.
And according to Victor Caspi from CHIME, he's their principal, Victoria, I guess it's not he, right? I don't know. But anyway, she's the principal investigator. And what she says is magnetars are quite well studied in our own galaxy to see something that we know produces something so incredibly bright right next to us. We know that if we could take it and put it in a distant galaxy, we'd still be able to see it. So that tells us that all these mysterious sources, that they are so far away that they all could be magnetars.
So all these different RFB or FRBs that are coming from different areas, maybe, I wonder if we get them from different directions, does that indicate how many magnetars are coming at us?
I don't know.
Or out there in the galaxy, I would say.
Well, because what they say is that CHIME tracked the fast radio burst to a weird type of star called a magnetar that's 32,000 light years from Earth. It's in a different part of the Milky Way, and that's according to 4 studies that were just published in the Journal of Nature.
Okay.
And it was not the only first ever fast radio burst traced to a source, but it's the first emanating from our galaxy. So astronomers believe that there could be other types of causes for these bursts, but for right now, they're sure that's one thing.
Okay.
Magnetars.
Which sounds like a Pokemon character.
It does. It's like magnetars. So these magnetars are incredibly dense neutron stars.
Yeah.
They're about 1.5 times the mass of our sun, squeezed into the space the size of Manhattan.
Oh.
I have no idea how big Manhattan is, but it's obviously smaller than our sun, right? They have ginormous magnetic fields which buzz and crackle with energy. Sometimes flares of X-rays and radio waves come bursting out of them.
Oh.
Yeah. So knowing that some of these can be more likely caused by magnetars, it makes you wonder what they kind of are. And so what's happening here is that these things are producing these little squirts of fast radio bursts or squirts of energy coming out of them, right? And they've been projected this way, and we've been able to sort of track them with these telescopes. But until us, no one has tried to capture them and then listen and then translate it as to what it may actually be.
Oh.
Because it's radio.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's like, and these things are kind of crazy, right? Because it says okay, so Caltech has one too, right? But check this out. Christopher Benachek, who's a doctoral student, basically put together something and was able to record some information. But he says this: in a millisecond, this magnetar is emitted as much energy in radio waves as the sun does in 30 seconds.
That's a lot of energy
Yeah.
and power. Yeah.
So this burst that was captured, right, it put out way more energy than the sun does in 30 seconds. And basically, he's part of the Survey for Transient Astronomical Research, radio emissions, STARE.
Yeah.
2. I mean, it was just STARE 1, now it's just STARE 2.
Project.
And this guy's like DIY telescope arrays. They're very different. So he actually made one out of like 6-inch steel pipe and two cake pans. So anyway, so regardless of all that, until recently, all these little radio bursts been coming out. They've been recorded, been coming out as just little radio bursts. But we've been able to take it and translate it and actually get a message out of it, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we should play it and hear people what we got, and so they can hear and see. I'm just so excited about this and see what they actually what they think about it.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to play it right now after a brief message. I'm not going to do it. I can watch shows and stuff.
No.
Okay. So anyway, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. I got to figure out where I saved it. Here we go. Took a lot of work on this. Worked on this for like 2 weeks. It cleans up at the end, so you got to listen to the end.
Hello, we're reaching out to you about your vehicle's extended warranty options. Please respond.
Isn't that crazy?
Really? Really?
Yeah, you know how hard it is to take that and slow that down? Uh-huh. We're talking like millisecond burst, and more energy than the sun puts out in 30 seconds.
Why is there no way to opt out or block?
I don't know.
Really?
No idea. So there you go.
No, that's not it.
So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or maybe the idea that we can transmit a message back to these magnetars, you can call and leave us a message. We have a phone number. It's 1-575-208-4025.
Or contact@creepgeeks.com.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to regroup and take a second and take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And you've been listening to the CreepGeeks Podcast.
Audible is audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, listeners of CreepGeeks Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/cheapgeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we figured out that mystery of what these stars are trying to say to us, these magnetars.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I thought of this, it was actually, I remember reading about this, and I was telling you about this earlier today. You know, we're trying to figure out what these bursts are and if they mean anything or if it's just basically noise caused by the sort of natural phenomena that occurs in outer space, right?
Yeah.
Energy discharge, things like that. And then I started thinking about how much we send out into space is just a byproduct of radio transmissions, satellite transmissions, TV shows, commercials, all that garbage that we just send to each other.
Yeah.
So that we can, you know, listen to it and take part of it and do whatever. But we're just continuing our daily, you know, we're living our best life, right?
Yeah. All
that stuff goes out in space, or a good chunk of it goes out in space. So if you think about it, we've been spamming the cosmos since we first fired up our radio transmissions.
Which is why, like, some of those comics we see where it's like, or like web comics or cartoons we see where it's like the aliens and this season of Earth is getting crazy, is not that far off of a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have been broadcasting radio waves and frequencies and every bit of information we can broadcast across that medium out into the cosmos, I mean, there's got to be somebody paying attention.
I would think so. I mean, especially since they're saying that there's so many different, you know, for lack of, let's just call them M-class planets. If you listen or watch Star Trek at all, you know, habitable planets inside the fruitful zone or whatever it's called. I mean, so we send all this information out there, and if there is other things out there that are just as intelligent as we are, which I would say, you know, judging by the amount of planets they say could exist, it's probably a pretty high number.
Mm-hmm.
And they can watch and study this, or if they have the capability of watching and studying this, they've got to know something about us. And I think what they're going to find out is that generally we're just a bunch of knuckleheads, according to the TV and the stuff that we put out. You know,
maybe.
So if they use that as a measure of us as in humankind and how we are and what we're doing,
maybe
that might be a little problematic, right?
That's
for us anyway.
A good argument against the possible belief in UFOs.
Yeah.
And aliens is because, you know, we've broadcasted all this trash out there. By now, you think somebody would have come here, landed, and either slapped us silly or said, "That's it, we're revoking your existence."
Yeah, or just came by and told us to turn it down.
Yeah,
you know,
we've gotten a lot of
noise
and here's
complaints. Something too. Maybe all these signals that we send out in space, maybe that's like a warning to just stay away.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's like, yeah, go on down to Garbage Town. You know what I mean? That's a garbage planet. It's like, stay away from that garbage planet, man.
Aliens lock their doors when they fly past.
It's like, or they just, you know, they put us on that list of, you know, quarantined planet.
They're listening in one species to another. Hey, I just found this frequency from Earth. And like, oh, girl, no.
Yeah,
they have a show called Real Housewives. Can you believe that?
Yeah, it's a text message. It says, you need to, have you seen this garbage? So anyway, I thought it was pretty funny and thought that we'd put that in the podcast. If you like that kind of thing, let us know. But moving on to the next story as we do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we talked about the translated signal that we worked so hard on. And I said we, so I can loop you in on this. So you can
thanks.
Catch some
so I can catch some of the heat.
Yeah. And so this article I thought was actually pretty interesting. It's the weird culture war over Bigfoot as a COVID-19 icon. And this came from thedailybeast.com.
Oh, man. So I have two bones to pick with this one.
All right, well, go.
Do you want to go ahead into
No, go ahead. You know, yeah.
So this article is a little controversial, but the byline is that some true believers appear to be coronavirus truthers, while less diehard enthusiasts are using Bigfoot as a symbol of social distancing. Now, at first layer, Bigfoot, who is rarely spotted and may or may not exist for skeptics, would be a good example for social distancing, because out of all the people on the planet or in the United States, and how rare sightings of Bigfoot are, it would make sense that he must be practicing some form of people avoidance or social distancing. And this article kind of goes into, I don't know how to say it, a lot of, it's a back and forth.
Yeah, well, okay, so the general gist of the article, right, is it talks about using Bigfoot and the idea of Bigfoot, right, in campaigns and things, sort of like a
public service announcement. Almost.
Yeah, and making puns and stuff about, Bigfoot tested negative for COVID because he washes his hands.
Yeah. And
that kind of thing. And Bigfoot says, it's kind of one of those deals where it's like, they're putting up signs. It says Bigfoot tested negative for coronavirus and explaining how social distancing helped him. Amazon sites, Redbubble, Sasquatch Outpost, all these places are selling, shirts and masks and pillows and mugs. And then featuring Bigfoot and promoting pandemic safety.
Yeah. And different organizations, anywhere from, like, at the start of this article, a anthropologist named Todd Disotell, and then different Bigfoot groups or enthusiast groups, like even right here in McDowell County, used him as a way to express or encourage social distancing.
Yeah.
And the whole, just like the ongoing joke, reigning hide and seek champion.
Yeah.
And you see that on every T-shirt that has Bigfoot on it, and that's cool and all.
Well, I mean, sure, I guess, okay, so look, Smokey the Bear, right, helped prevent forest fires. It was a campaign to draw people's interest in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And to make them more aware of the responsibility you have when you go out in the woods and you set a campfire, make sure it's dead out, all that sort of thing, so you don't burn the forest down.
Mm-hmm.
So now, 2020, we're using Bigfoot as a means to help promote COVID/pandemic safety, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's some people that don't necessarily think that's appropriate. But, there are some people, though, that are really all about it, right?
Yeah.
So didn't you say that, like, Cliff Barackman believes that these stunts and memes are, they're popular because they brought in, like, much-needed levity?
Yeah, to the otherwise grim pandemic discussions. Right. He's fine with this trend because he thinks lighthearted depictions will disincline people to shoot what he believes to be real and endangered creature on sight if they stumble upon one, which is kind of a brilliant concept because as long as you create Bigfoot in a way that endears him to the general public, then you'll have that whole generation of Bigfoot and cryptid hunters who will not want to harm.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I get that. And this goes towards a lot of people that kind of think that way. Like if you look at the Harry and the Hendersons movie.
Yeah.
They sort of humanized Bigfoot, made him nice and friendly, and, he hung out and had a family and all that sort of thing, and it made people like him. Now. But
then in the same sentence, he says, but many self-proclaimed Bigfoot researchers dislike the use of Sasquatch as a cultural icon, he adds. They find these memes tastelessly silly or believe they misrepresent what they claim are hard facts that they have uncovered about the creatures. And what makes me mad about that is in one voice he's saying it brings levity, but in another voice he's also saying that anybody who encourages this type of memery, it kind of decredits them or devalues them. So that's like
what Lauren Coleman says.
Yeah.
He says people who really know about Bigfoot understand they do not social distance. But he also basically says that's why you don't see some of these memes in this general stuff that shows up in Bigfoot believing social media circles. So, I kind of understand that. So I understand both sides of it. You have one side saying, hey, it's good to use something like this to make it a cultural icon so that maybe people will be more interested and become more educated and protect themselves against the pandemic. You also have one side saying, hey, this will make them cute and fuzzy enough to not want to just randomly shoot one if you see one out in the woods. Mm-hmm. So you can protect its existence by not needlessly shooting the Bigfoot. And then you have the other groups that are saying that, hey, this is a thing. This is a serious thing. It's a real thing. It's a credible thing. We believe in this cryptid, and we don't want this to sort of not be taken as seriously as it should be. So it takes all the credibility out of the entire thing, and it takes all the credibility out of their work. And then you have other people that are like science people that are like, hey, straight up, hey, they don't social distance themselves. That's the silly.
I don't know. I kind of took it as a little bit of a dig.
Well, sure.
So, I mean, because we do have another crop of cryptid researchers and paranormal researchers on the rise eventually. Eventually, in 10 years' time, I will be an older paranormal researcher, and there'll be other up-and-comers. And those up-and-comers, like, I'm in some Facebook groups and social media circles where they use humor as a way to educate. So they use things like memes and stuff like that. So to be so dismissive of that memery, kind of, I don't like.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot going on with this whole thing to actually unpack. I personally believe that Bigfoots are not nice.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, if they exist at all, because I haven't seen enough to be definitive enough to go, yeah, that thing's real. We've had our own experiences where I'm like, it doesn't fit anything I know, but I don't know everything about being out in the woods, right? But I do think that if there is this promotion and, you know, sort of making Bigfoot this soft and warm, fuzzy thing, I just don't know if that's the correct thing to do. It's the same thing that happens when you have, like, you know, like elk and buffalo and things like that. And you see the tourists that go out there and they see them in these big national parks. I think Yellowstone's probably the last one I've seen where somebody was trying to take pictures and got rooted up by one of these guys. These things are wild animals, right?
Took her pants in her underpants.
Yeah, you know, like whipped her across the road and stuff. So if this is a real animal and it is a real territorial thing and, you know, it has territorial tendencies, which if you compare them to great apes, that sort of thing, or even devolved humans, you need to exercise a lot of caution. And I would like to think that there should still be enough fear left for you to want to stay away.
But to your earlier argument for that point, Smokey the Bear was he was a cub when he was found. He was a real creature.
Right, he was a baby bear.
Yeah, and we used him as this cuddly little, only you can prevent forest fires.
Yeah, because he got burned in a fire.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so the thing about Smokey the Bear that might make this slightly different is that these forest fires were of grave concern, just in general, because they were huge.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that a bear... excuse me, is dangerous.
But not if you're a kid growing up.
I think back then, what was it, the 50s and 60s? I can't remember. Because we actually went to where Smokey the Bear legend was born and where it was created into a public thing. Because this is also around the time where Teddy Roosevelt that made like the bear because the teddy bear and all that sort of thing?
Spring 1950 in Capitan, New Mexico.
Okay. So we're talking about the 50s where people, I think, had a little bit more degree of common sense. So you're making the duck face like, no, that's not true. Let me put it to you this way, and this is sort of a different thing. As we progress in our years of existence, technology has made it easier for us to do things and has made us softer. In the 50s, when you went out and went camping, for example, there was no just amazing little flip it out of the bag and whoop it up and it pops up into a tent. It was like 5,000 rods you put together and stakes and stuff. Everything was more manual. Everything was harder to do. So I think that people generally had more of an understanding of how things worked because things were harder.
Not necessarily, because this same time period where forest fires were becoming a serious issue was the same time when everybody was returning from the war. Everybody was doing that road trip in America thing. Some people did not have common sense. They were driving across America, stopping in these national forests, sleeping in their cars or a tent, and causing forest fires.
Well, I get it, but I guess what I'm saying is I think during the 50s, especially after the war, people were mostly already back and filtering back into society, that these people were already harder, tougher, stronger, and just basically more
and then
into it.
That commonplace acceptance over time of Smokey the Bear is why we now have tourists getting flipped over by buffalo or attacked by elk in national parks.
I don't think that was because of Smokey the Bear. I think that it's over time with technology and things being the way they are and people being softer and seeing all these shows on television that sort of have like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and all these nature shows has made it to where people don't understand the real fear and danger of being around a wild animal. It doesn't have the same sort of thing to them. Whereas when you look at the World War II generation, they're considered our greatest generation. They went and they fought wars, World War, and they came back and rebuilt everything in America.
But
so they're tougher, stronger. I think they're smarter, man. I've been out in the woods with my grandpa who's seen a dangerous snake, and he just reached down, grabbed it, and whipped it off in the woods and kept on doing his own thing. And said, you got to watch them snakes. They're dangerous. And he just did it in 2 seconds and moved on. I don't think that would happen these days, because I know if I seen it, I'd be trying to figure out, okay, do we just go the other way? What do we do here? Problem solved. So I'm thinking that a part of this lends itself to Bigfoot.
I think with the depictions, like we were saying, of Smokey Bear and the depictions of Bigfoot we have pre-COVID, I think...
See, you're forgetting to include the greatest bear.
What?
Yogi.
But see, that's the other thing. Bigfoot encounters that do make the rounds in social media are Bigfoot ate my food or Bigfoot eats off my farm. There's so many various descriptions and encounters with Bigfoot.
Okay, and over time, same thing if you look at the UFO and abduction type thing, right? That's been occurring. It originally started out as being scary, and now it seems like there's a lot of instances where they're just love and light, and they just want to help us, and blah, 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 and I don't believe it.
And that's why I don't think you can place all the blame about Bigfoot.
I think you just need to ratchet it back a little bit. I'm not placing all the blame on Bigfoot.
Well, I'm not saying you, but all the blame on the de-scare tactics.
Desensitization?
Yes, there you go. Of Bigfoot on these memes. I mean, you have a lot of blame over on the women who bake Bigfoot pies and leave them
I'm not, but see, that's part of that's part of the entire machine.
Yeah.
You desensitize the dangerous aspects of this Bigfoot. You put him on T-shirts. You keep doing all that stuff. He becomes this sort of, soft and fuzzy cultural icon kind of thing. And I think that, the real serious aspect of this thing possibly being an animal that could rip your arms and legs off and rip you in half gets played down to the point where people just don't look at it that way anymore. And I think that some of these people are saying this is a serious thing, and you shouldn't necessarily be treating it like it's not. And maybe really the word is misappropriation. So people in general are misappropriating Bigfoot, right, and turning him into this sort of public service announcement, these, as far as cleaning your hands and doing all this stuff and, hide and seek world champion and stuff like that. It sells lots of merchandise and it's bringing a lot of ideas of what you think Bigfoot might be. But I think at the same time, I don't really think it's doing Bigfoot any favors. And it's certainly not doing the scientists any favors who are trying to do serious research or credible research, especially all the TV shows involved as well.
Like to Cliff's merit, because in this article, they really briefly mention that Tulsa, Oklahoma thing where that state park tried to have a Bigfoot sighting and it got messed up because there's too many people with cell phones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that, to his credit, yes, that kind of delegitimizes the Bigfoot research, in that argument. But I think just focusing on just like the lighthearted aspect of it and not going, don't worry, Bigfoot doesn't really walk around with a face shield and mask.
Well, yeah. Okay. But
I mean,
okay. So for many of the roughly 10 to 25% of Americans who say they buy into Bigfoot, their belief is nominal at most, but diehard belief usually means rejecting mainstream science, which of course doesn't support Bigfoot's existence.
Yeah. Now, the one thing, so that's the overall disappointment I have with this article. One of the latter ones that you have to read into here.
Well, that was a quote from Max Brooks.
Yeah.
Who basically argues, according to this, an earnest belief that Bigfoot corresponds with the fall of shared factual beliefs in America. Brooks, who's been studying Sasquatch all his life in large part because he says he's terrified of the creatures, recently released De-Evolution, a book about people isolated in their homes by a natural disaster and besieged by big feet.
Huh.
I guess that's plural for Bigfoot. I just thought it'd just be Bigfoot.
I would kind of, that sounds scary.
Yeah, and see, that was my point, because we've talked about things where, and had basically talked about instances that have been reported about Bigfoot, where they have to send, or where the government has sent in teams to either relocate or exterminate, get rid of these rogue Bigfoots that are killing people. And all these cover-ups that are allegedly happening about hunters being ripped in half and stuffed in trees. And we've talked to people who've told us these, things about cows being get ripped.
Yeah.
So maybe Bigfoot is not a nice guy. I don't know. But, so there's a whole bunch of arguments rolled into this idea that, Bigfoot is an icon.
But then, yeah.
A cultural war over Bigfoot it should just be the weird cultural war over Bigfoot.
And see, that's the thing. The overall wraparound of this argument, or this article, turns into this argument about looping in paranormal and Bigfoot researchers into this far out there group that falls into conspiracies. And like they keep using the word in here, and I don't want to use it that much during this podcast, but COVID-19 trutherism.
Yeah.
And then they start to basically either tattle or kind of dig at some of the recent Bigfoot events that did actually happen this year. And I mean, they went so far as to talk about the Boggy Bottom Bigfoot Conference, the Jefferson one that we were trying to get into.
See, and here's the thing. And this is what they do. This is what a lot of people do. Well, go ahead and finish your point, and then I'm going to...
And so they're kind of going into the social media on some of these, including the Ohio conference that we missed. And, nobody... kind of hinting that people weren't adhering to social distancing and, avoiding
This is part of the
COVID.
agenda that I don't like.
But then, nowhere in here did they mention, the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference in Gatlinburg, or one of the conferences one of our friends went to, where social distancing was encouraged. And there's only one small line about McDowell County, North Carolina, how they actually turned theirs into a social distance scavenger hunt that went really well.
That's because we get into what happens these days. People write articles.
Mm-hmm.
They get paid to write the articles. And they also try to insert whatever agenda they think needs to be said.
Yeah.
And they put it in there in a way that it makes it seem like, oh, I'm just going to point out some facts when it's not. Because I'll give you an example. They talk about, these social gatherings that occurred, because that's what they're really saying they are, right?
Yeah.
Around Bigfoot. And all these with these social gatherings that occurred, they talk to the idea of super spreading COVID and everything else, right? He alludes to it in this particular article right here.
Yeah.
But nothing is said when you have thousands of people protesting, how does that not promote super spreading as well?
Yeah.
It's just basically saying, okay, I'm going to write an article, but I'm going to go ahead and insert what I think, is a little dig. This is what they do. This is what the articles that we read these days. There's always the writer's little opinion about something.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly getting to the point in my life where I don't want your opinion. Honestly, I want to know, unless it's an op-ed piece or unless it actually is an opinion piece, I don't really give a crap.
Yeah.
Because, for example, we did go to the Gatlinburg event.
Smoky Mountain.
Everybody there had masks. There was 6 foot. There was hand sanitizer everywhere, social distancing. All the rules were applied.
Temperatures at the door.
Right. They did everything that they were supposed to do. Everything has been put out and been mandated. But you can't just, in this particular article, allude to the fact that these things are bad, but not point out the opposite side of that, saying that, by adhering to the rules and such and doing all this stuff, that it can be good. It's never 50-50 anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of okay, so we're going to hear about Bigfoot.
He even goes
good
so
and
far
bad.
to talk about pandemic doubters. And that kind of made me a little grumpy. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but it's it's not that these people may be pandemic doubters. It's people are adhering by the guidelines within their particular state, as is their right, and they're going to do what they're going to do. We've only done a couple events this year. I wear a mask. Why? Because I interact with the public, and because that's how I deal with things. So if you have a different way of dealing with things, that's your right. I'm not going to cast a bad light on things.
Yeah.
So that's
the entire thing. It's basically social it's, I don't know. Okay. So here, it's one of those things where you don't want to walk the line. Okay. A lot of people believe and know that COVID is a real virus and it is a real thing. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the numbers, and I'm not saying this is in my opinion, but if you look at the numbers and you use hard statistical data, it's not a pandemic. Now, that being said, what actually is defined as being a pandemic, I don't really know. You know what I mean? I think of a pandemic as taking over the entire world because what was that movie called? It was Viruses Spread by the Monkey?
Oh, God.
And Dustin Hoffman saved the day. Was it Outbreak or something like that?
Yes, Outbreak.
You know, where it spreads and the rate of spread and the percentage of spread. It's like, okay. Now, to those people that don't necessarily think that COVID-19, and this is actually a pandemic, hey, that's what they think. And if they're looking at the numbers and they say it doesn't make sense, like, you know, if the total numbers of people infected versus the total numbers of people dying is like 0.0002%, does that really make a pandemic? I don't know.
That's not an actual number.
No, it's not. But none of these numbers are actual. I think that's really the problem, the entire problem with this COVID-19 thing. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, right? Social distance, don't social distance. Herd immunity, no herd immunity. It's been back and forth, and nobody knows really what the hell to do with this whole thing. So you have people that say, I'm not going to wear a mask, and then you have people that do wear a mask. Me, broke my neck, I'm immunocompromised, I wear a mask, right? And the same argument that says, oh, well, you should be wearing a mask too. Well, does it really matter if I'm wearing a mask and I'm protected? You know what I mean? So, I mean,
but at this point, we do have to say we are not medical experts, and we're not.
I don't think anybody is listening to us that's going to know that. You know, they're not going to go, oh my God, the CreepGeeks Podcast. Those guys are a bunch of medical weenies.
Well, you know, the algorithms.
Oh well, you know
they're
what?
They're going to get us.
The algorithm's going to get us all. The entire point is that when you have articles like this that basically comes across and it's an interesting article, but then it sort of devolves into you should wear your mask because people that actually like Bigfoot or believe in Bigfoot and attend events are causing problems. That's the kind of thing that I don't like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like a passive-aggressive way to get their idea across.
It is 2020. I am so tired of the slinging of mud. That's what it comes down to. So
I think you should do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I meet the criteria to wear a mask out in public, as do a lot of people, so I do.
Okay.
And if anything, it's a selfish reason. I just want to make it through 2020. That's it. I don't want to get anything. I don't want to spread anything. I don't want to be a part of all that stuff. You know what I mean?
In some ways, I am a public icon, or not icon, but I am a public figure, I should say. Corrected there.
I'm an icon.
A public
Easy
figure.
Kanye.
I interact with the public on a frequent basis. I wear a mask.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah. I mean, and regardless of how you believe with this sort of thing, who knows, man? There's so much information, point, counterpoint, all that. Nobody really knows what's going on with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
It just needs to end.
It does.
So, and you know, if you're a theorist, you can make this go either way.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, if you come up to me and say, where's your mask? I'm going to tell you it's none of your damn business. Because it'll more than likely be around my neck, you know? And here's the thing, too. Here's the problem I have with most things that are issues in general, right? Public issues that have been dragged into the limelight. If you see somebody who's not wearing a mask, just stay away from them.
Yeah.
There's normally, and if you're adhering to the 6-foot social distancing rules, you should be okay. Stay away from them. If you see somebody in a store not wearing a mask, just move away. How about that? That's like if you see something on television you do not like, get on the internet and immediately blast them on everything you can, right? That's 2020. Me, I'm going to pick up the remote control. I'm going to press guide. I'm going to select, you know, some of the 200 channels of bullshit that's on the TV and select something else. And I'm going to move on with my life and it's not going to affect me. It's like 2020 is an entirely too much butt hurt. It really is. Just move on, man. Move away.
Okay.
Step away.
Step away.
Turn the channel. Don't read it if you don't like it. Mm-hmm. That's so much easier, isn't it? Not be like, I'm going to get on the internet and tell my 6 people that listen to me
but much like
how I've been wronged.
Much like we were talking about the masked Bigfoot or the Smokey Bear icon, you have to do something now, because what about the impressionable youth?
That's not even a reason anymore that people do this. That's the way it used to be.
Other people who can't speak up because they were a little hurt by whatever. Yeah.
Well, who are you to speak up for anybody?
Exactly.
And that's the way I look at it too. But so many people, they just want to start fights, man. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Now, with that being said, it's all good, man. I think you should do you. I'll do me. And that's it.
Okay.
Everybody should just stay in their own damn lanes with everything. I mean, come on. It's not that far. January is like coming up. Let's just roll through this year. Right?
Yeah.
Let's just keep it calm.
What in the world? Okay.
And you know what? If you want to talk about Bigfoot and put a mask on him as trying to show somebody how to social distance themselves, you go right ahead. If you want to talk trash about that person who's doing that, you go right ahead. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all this stuff really doesn't matter. You know, it really doesn't. So what really matters is paying taxes. Pay your taxes.
Yes.
Go to the grocery store. Feed your face.
Feed your dog.
Yeah. Take trips. Take pictures.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. Anyway, see, and that's the whole thing. This dude who wrote this article, I'm sure if he was to find out that we actually talked about it and listen, it'd be like, that was my point. It's just to get people talking. Because that's the excuse, right? When people throw stuff out there, they're like, if I can just encourage discussion on the subject, my job is done. That's a cop-out if I ever heard one.
To open the conversation between two different viewpoints. No.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
You threw mud at somebody, and somebody threw mud back, and now you're like, see, that's what I wanted. I wanted interaction. Turn the channel, read something else, whatever, man.
Put a mask on your Bigfoot statue. Don't. Yeah. I don't care.
Write some Bigfoot stories, paranormal stories.
Put them on Amazon.
Yep. Give them a crazy title.
We should do a whole episode on those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there has been. It's funny you bring it up. The Bigfoot erotica guy who was a GOP candidate.
Oh yeah.
Says I'm writing about Bigfoot, not Bigfoot erotica, and I think that was proven to be false. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Here's the deal, man. Just be nice. And I'm to the point where I forgot what we were talking about. So I would play a commercial, but I think we already did that. Okay, so moving back into the podcast, kind of moving on from that. It is an interesting thing, though. At what point does doing all this stuff and using Bigfoot or other cryptids as, sort of cultural icons, at what point is that a bad thing, or is it continually, considered to be a good thing? And there are equal, I would say, arguments about the pros and cons of doing that sort of thing. And I understand all the sides of it because we've seen it.
Yeah.
If you've seen Bigfoot wearing a mask on a T-shirt with a little kid, you'd think it's cute. But if you had somebody saying seriously that Bigfoot is a social distancing champion and blah, 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 you're like, okay, it's not. I get it. We all get it. But at the end of the day, until Bigfoot has been proven to be a real thing and without, any possibility of the intangibles that are coming up that kind of sort of debunk or devalue people's, evidence, it doesn't matter. And you may have enough incidental evidence out there to be like, you know what, I know in my heart that he's real. But, and like they keep saying, until like a body is produced or there is obvious physical evidence, then we'll probably never know. But then if you look at the conspiracy side of things, the government will never let us know. Yeah. So speaking of happiness, most of us are doomed. You know why?
Why?
Because according to this article, it's mostly genetic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it says here that nearly half of happiness is genetic, so most of us are doomed. And, of course, this is from the New York Post. And it basically says happiness is significantly determined at birth. And this is a psychotherapist named Susan Zen who runs a therapy practice in Santa Monica, California. She says close to 40% of human happiness is a result of good genes. And the claim is backed by some research published in 2016 that talks about genetic influences that account for basically 32 to 40% of the variation in overall happiness.
Okay.
All right. So I kind of get what they're saying here, but they also say, don't worry though, if you're not genetically disposed to be a happy person, that you can completely trick and rewire your brain to be super happy.
I believe that, though.
Oh, absolutely, you could prove that. It's called the power of thought, right? The power of positivity.
Yeah.
Because we have all met that one aggravating person that's just super happy all the time. And they just get on your nerves. Like, come on, man. Just, keep that, because there's only so much levity and happiness you can take before it just gets on your nerves.
Which makes you the awful person in the end, because you almost want that person to have one bad day.
Yeah. Or other people see us going, man, why are you all, come on, that person's just,
And
so you are the bad
vibing,
guy.
man.
And maybe that's part of it. Maybe you're the bad guy because you're just genetically predisposed to not be happy like they are. Maybe you don't have joyous DNA.
Yeah. They're just vibing and you're just hating.
Yeah, they're having a contented life, right? And living their good life, and you're over there just
salty,
stink-faced
all the time.
You're like, so happy. Why are you so happy? So maybe it's in your genes, but it talks about lucky genes or not, and that you can have a happy existence if you break it down into three main parts.
Okay.
This is what's going to determine if you're happy or not. Ready?
Yeah.
How satisfied are you with your life? How engaged are you in your daily activities? Right? And this is, from your relationships to your job. And how much purpose do you feel you have? Those are the things that they're using to determine a happy existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little tough.
Now here's the easy way out.
Yeah.
All right. For those seeking to lead happier lives, Zen recommends dropping the pursuit for perfection.
Yeah.
And focus your energy on volunteering.
Okay.
Laughing.
Okay.
Feeling grateful.
Sure.
Eating well.
Nope.
Exercising. Connecting with a higher power, or otherwise tapping into spirituality to find more purpose.
So basically, every single self-help book is no longer necessary because of that one paragraph.
Well, that's the trick to it.
Okay.
Everything that's in that paragraph is in all these self-help books.
Yeah.
They're all saying the same thing, probably in a different way. Yep.
But I'm doing half of those. So, and I'm sorry, 2020 has gotten me pretty hard.
I think it's got everybody.
I know. So I'm, y'all follow me on social media. I do a lot of these. And I'm sorry, I'm really bummed out by 2020.
Well, suck it up, Buttercup. Be happy.
Or is it in my genes? Am I just forever
Whatever,
salty?
you can fix it. If you acted spontaneously, that could also be a key to happiness.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy short-term pleasures, that can also make you happy. I don't know what that means exactly.
See, I don't...
Oh, here's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't agree with that one.
In addition to good genes, having money has also been found to be correlated with increased happiness.
Despite the old adage, which is money can't buy happiness. You
know what? I would like to be able to try it.
I know. There's that meme, and it's like, you know what they say? Money can't buy happiness. And then the dude tweets, he's like, literally money would fix most of my problems right now.
Yeah.
Especially
like you were saying earlier about 2020. It's like Americans as a whole, however, are nationally bummed out more than they have been in close to 50 years. Comparatively, Hawaii has been found to be the happiest state.
I wonder why.
Because it's a tropical paradise. It's a vacation. The whole state's vacationville, man.
So I have a theory, and I think your ability to be exposed to the sun, vitamin D exposure, your ability to go outside and enjoy the weather really does affect your happiness level.
Well, yeah, sure.
So moving to the East Coast where it rains frequently, you have to plan your activities. It's hard to be spontaneous without being reckless and dangerous, especially with outdoor stuff. It has affected my happiness. Whereas, if I had a bad day at work in New Mexico, or people in the Southwest have a bad day at work, they can literally just walk outside in the sun.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure that's part of it.
So,
you know,
go for a stroll.
But now if you take these things where you try to be happy, you look towards contentment, and you try to do things that would make you happy, and you have money, there's a higher likelihood that you're going to be happy.
Oh, no poop. Duh. I mean, yeah.
What?
I was going to say
you
no
can
shit.
say no shit, because this is a podcast where we're of age.
PG-13.
We're allowed. Hey, have you heard teenagers talk?
Yes.
They say terrible things.
No, you just don't understand what they're saying.
No, I totally understand what they're saying. So, and don't try to, what's that? You trying to throw, what's it called? Shade. You ain't throwing no shade on my light bulb, man. Nope. Yep.
All right.
Now, if you want to know something, I think it would probably have the biggest impact on the working public in general to help them become happy.
Yeah.
How about we do this? How about let's make your work hours relevant to the type of job that you actually have?
Okay.
Why do we work a 40-hour work week?
Because of Henry Ford.
Yes.
Yes, I got it right.
Yeah, you watched the same TikTok I watched.
No, I didn't.
Whatever. But no, I mean, okay, so it makes sense, right? There's jobs out there that require a certain amount of production, and with that production, with Henry Ford, and he sort of modernized the production line, and actually got it, brought it out into the light and made it into a thing.
Yeah.
You needed a certain amount of time, a certain amount of days to produce a certain amount of product. But if you have a job that you're not producing that particular type of product, why is you're just automatically in that sort of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of 40-hour work week thing when you may be working a position that doesn't need to follow those same sort of constraints?
Yeah.
Like if your job is, for example, I don't know, I'm trying to pick a job. It doesn't have to be done in 40 hours.
I've got a good example. I just thought of it.
All right.
Okay, so let's just say you work in a help desk or a call center.
All right.
So most help desk, like technical support issues, happen at two different times. They either happen from morning to lunch, because that's what happens in offices, or they happen after hours when people come home from work and they're working on a project, or they're helping their kids with schoolwork, or they're a teacher and they have to, let's just say they have to print out a bunch of pictures or get all the cameras ready for their students, that type of stuff. So why are people working like an 8-hour day that crosses those? Why can't they just work like 6 hours during those peak hours?
Well, I kind of look at it like this. Why can't you work until your job is done and then go home?
So I was thinking more call center, and there's
I know, but I mean, just in general, like say if you have a job where you can get the first, and if you can work your job and get your job done in 4 hours, why are you hanging around? But see, and really what happens is that if you have a job that you can get done in 4 hours, or your particular work day for that particular day is 4 hours, you're stuck trying to make the 8 so that you can get paid for a full day's wage.
Yeah. The
only time it doesn't really sort of make sense is salary, right?
And then they just work you to death.
Yeah, because they expect more out of you because you're going to, because they say they're paying you more, so you should work more, but it never seems to go both ways. It never seems to go, your salary, so if your job is done in 4 hours, you're going to get paid the same anyway, you should just go home. Even in the military.
Okay.
Where you're salaried basically, and if your job is done, you should be able to go home. Now they always want to keep you around. So I think that, if it gets to the point where you can work your job and leave and you're finished for the day and everything's taken care of, you should go home.
Okay.
And I think that when it comes to vacation and stuff like that, you should be able to take it.
I agree, because I'm getting to the point where, especially a lot of my friends who work in like call centers or retail, none of them can take vacations. Even during 2020, during a pandemic, a lot of them can't take vacations because there's expectation and demand.
Yeah.
We as Americans and consumers, I should say, have that expectation that, like, let's just say we need support or we need retail, so we need to buy a product. We should be able to instantaneously go get that support or go out and get that product. I mean, how shocking would it be here in America to like show up at the store and be like, oh, I'm sorry, all of our staff really wanted Thanksgiving off, so we gave it to them. You'll have to come back tomorrow.
Well,
you know.
you got to remember, though, the people that have that expectation are typically doing their vacation.
Yeah.
Or they're off anyway.
Yeah.
So the only time they can go do it is because they're off.
Yeah.
So if the only time I can go and get everything I need for Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving because I work a 40-hour week and that's the only time I can do it, and I have so much other things going on.
Yeah.
And I show up to the place to get the stuff, but they're off too because of Thanksgiving, then when is that supposed to happen? See, we're stuck in this whole Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week thing, or 5-day work week, 40 hours a week.
So we need to rewire ourselves.
Yeah.
Which kind
because
of goes
when
to
I
this
spent time in the military and went overseas, right, there was a lot of places that did the whole siesta thing. They were closed from I think it was 11 to 2.
Yeah.
But they would stay open until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night.
Actually, there's a restaurant here locally that does that.
Yeah, it's the siesta thing where, during the middle of the day, they're going to be closed for 2, 3, 4 hours or whatever so that they can do what they got to do.
Yeah. And what they do is they clean up the kitchen, and then the kids come from school and they help them with homework, and
Yeah.
then they open up for the afternoon.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, it would take much to the credit of this article, it would take us rewiring the way our expectations.
Now, a large chunk of Europe did get rewired during World War II when it became a lot of production-heavy things to, support the war effort. A lot of that sort of went away.
Yeah.
That whole idea of just being closed or working random hours. But, I mean, if you owned a shop somewhere where you had a certain amount of things that you did during the day and you were done, if you didn't have to, worry about maintaining the 8 hours a week, Monday through Friday thing, I think it'd be great to be able to just go. And people say, well, then you should start your own business. But that's not how that works because you have customers.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're open just in case a customer comes in. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or trying to make a sale of a product or an exchange of a good or service or whatever, just in case somebody calls. So it's kind of a no-win situation here, unless you could basically make a product or something like that, or had some kind of product where you could stockpile it or sell it. But then you get into the whole, I guess that's why the allure of the sort of people saying you could sell on the internet even while you're sleeping. You know what I mean? It's like, what? You could provide a product for somebody to pick up and buy, and they could buy it on the internet, and you wouldn't even have to be there to maintain it or anything like that. And it's like, man, so you're telling me I could passively sell my product and make money, and I wouldn't have to put in all these hard hours and long work weeks? And I'm like, yeah.
But that's not true.
Exactly.
Because marketing. You can't sell a product if nobody knows about it.
But I can sell you a program that'll automatically submit whatever it is to all these other places. There's always a hook.
So there's always a hook to happiness, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Great. That's a bummer of a way to add to the podcast.
According to this, if I had good genes and money, it would be correlated with a higher or increased amount of happiness. So I would probably be okay with it.
Yeah.
So there you go. No winning. But if you want to be happy, though, you can be happy. But basically the reason why I put this article in here is that if you're just predisposed, how do you say that? Disposed?
Stop. Predisposed.
Yeah. To not being happy, it may not necessarily just be your mindset that's causing it. That's all. I'm not talking about depression and all that stuff. I'm just saying that, there are some people that are inherently and genetically, according to this, more happy than you. And it would probably be easier for you to be happier if you were genetically disposed to be happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you can rewire your brain. Take the joy in the small things. Do things that give you a certain amount of pleasure. Do work that you can basically take pride in. That kind of thing. There you go. Okay. That's all I got to say about that.
All
right. So moving back into the podcast real quick, there's not really a whole lot else we have to talk about, except for possibly something that sort of happened in one of the live streams.
Okay.
It was a question. I think it was our last live stream. Was it? I don't know. We were asked about SkinWalker Ranch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And according to Mystery Wire, now the reason why Mystery Wire as a website's important is because it has George Knapp involved in this. And he was the one that we were talking about during our live stream. Somebody asked about SkinWalker Ranch. And we brought up that George Knapp, who also did the interview with Bob Lazar in Area 51, basically he wrote a book about SkinWalker Ranch, and he documented certain instances that were occurring on SkinWalker Ranch, and it sort of gave us all an insight into what is possibly one of the spookiest places on Earth. Right? Mm-hmm. It is like a paranormal Walt Disney World for all things that happen. And so when we were asked about SkinWalker Ranch, because we talked about the possibility of that show coming back, and we did talk about how the show may not necessarily be what the expectation of someone who knows about SkinWalker Ranch is versus someone who doesn't know anything at all about SkinWalker.
Yeah.
And that there might be a little bit of a difference there because maybe some of the energy is just not the same anymore. And that might be the reason why it was sold in the first place, and now it's on TV versus before when it was super secret. You couldn't get in there, all of that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So when I thought about SkinWalker Ranch and the question that was asked, hey, what do you think about SkinWalker Ranch? And we talked about it on live stream. I thought it'd be kind of good to put at least an article in here where you can basically read up about SkinWalker Ranch. Now, this article came out before Halloween.
Okay.
It was written by George Knapp for Mystery Wire. So if you want to go to mysterywire.com, you can read it. And like everything we talk about in the podcast, we have links in our show notes. If you go to creepgeeks.com, you can click away and do all that good stuff if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so in Utah, you have SkinWalker Ranch. It's in rural northeastern Skinwalker country, right? So basically, it's in Utah.
Yeah.
So SkinWalker Ranch, rural northeastern Utah. And this article does go through and talk about some of the strangeness, and it goes way beyond like things like mysterious aircraft. Because that's something that's been seen there. There's a lot of mysterious aircraft, unidentified craft that fly around that particular area. You know, but for 15 generations, indigenous tribes like the Utes and other tribes have been basically talking about the sandstone ridge that sort of goes around SkinWalker Ranch as being in the path of the Skinwalker. And of course, they think the Skinwalker is a malevolent, shape-shifting creature. And it's pretty scary. Right? Mm-hmm. So the article also talks about, you know, the ridge goes and overlooks the property and how it got its nickname, the SkinWalker Ranch, because it's in that area. And also talks about Dr. John Alexander, who retired from Army intelligence as a colonel. And he was part of the first scientific study of the ranch under the umbrella of NIDS, which is the National Institute for Discovery Science.
Yeah.
And, of course, that was sort of a think tank created and funded by Rob Bigelow, who is basically an aerospace entrepreneur, and he also had government contracts, that sort of thing. So Alexander was directly involved with the U.S. Army Psychic Warrior Research Program and also became one of the very first employees for NIDS. It's run by Bob Bigelow. It says, after reading a Deseret newspaper about a story of UFO activity at Skinwalker Ranch, Bob Bigelow flew to Utah, bought the property, and assigned a team of professionals to study the ranch and the basin. So the rancher and his neighbors told the NIDS team about a litany of bizarre activity from shadow people that are appearing in and out and sort of around the ranch house. Yeah. Poltergeist type activity, where they actually have physical objects moving on their own. Strange animals, including like huge wolves and Sasquatches, and holes in the sky. We would probably call those portals.
Yeah.
Now, the scientists that were there from NIDS to sort of investigate and research this sort of thing witnessed much of this activity for themselves, including animals carved up with surgical precision. There's your cattle mutilations. And the ghostly images that appeared on camera, and they all documented hundreds of paranormal events. And John Alexander told Mystery Wire, something else is in control. And if it wants you to find out, it may allow that. But if it doesn't, this thing keeps morphing and changing into, you know, new shapes, new forms. We had cameras there and the things that happened just off camera, sometimes in front of the camera, but you just wouldn't see them.
Which goes to that trickster element.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the NIDS investigation was conducted in secrecy for years, but again, like you were just saying, was stymied by the trickster intelligence. So 2005, Hunt for the Skinwalker book comes out, which reveals details about the ranch to the world. Mm-hmm. And it also came into the attention of the Defense Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as DIA. And with the support of Harry Reid, right, at the time Senate Majority Leader, The DIA launched its own study of weird activity at the ranch. And this was all on, the larger issue of UFOs.
Yeah.
And it basically says in all, $22 million was allocated to the research to sort of find out what's going on. And then it sort of ties in 2017 about the Pentagon's secret study of UFOs. But I don't think what a lot of people realize is that the $22 million that was supposedly, put in play for examining, searching, I don't know why I said examining, but I meant to say investigating and researching UFOs.
Yeah.
Also put money into SkinWalker Ranch. So that budget, that huge $22 million budget, which is nothing for the government, really is such a small amount. A chunk of that money went to SkinWalker Ranch to continue to investigate SkinWalker Ranch.
Okay.
So, and it kind of ties in with Lou Elizondo, who at the time was the intelligence officer in charge of the Pentagon's program, which they call the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, otherwise known as AATIP. Mm-hmm. Like AA-Ron, right?
Stop.
Yeah. And so they also talked about, okay, so that group studied the Tic Tac, the Go Fast, the Gimbal UFO footage that went along with that, and other military encounters. But, hey, man, SkinWalker was in there too. So it's just kind of an overview of SkinWalker Ranch to kind of give you an idea of what that place was all about.
Yeah.
So if you really want to learn more about it and read more about it, you can definitely pick up the book, Hunt for SkinWalker.
Which I think we have a link in our show notes.
We do.
Yeah.
And you can also watch Hunt for the SkinWalker, which was a film done in 2018 that kind of gives you an idea about what was going on there. And it was put in place, has George Knapp in it. And since he wrote the book and has been investigating this for such a long time, he is the expert that you'd want to talk to. So, I would think he's definitely a subject matter expert when it comes to SkinWalker Ranch because he's done the research for this for so long.
Yeah.
But some of the stories that come out of there that are in the book are super creepy, man. But the idea of the trickster element, showing you what it thinks you want to see or what it wants you to see or not showing you anything at all, that's something that they all talk about.
Yeah.
Like the researchers that were there, the scientists and the experiences that they had, the owners of the ranch itself that they had. I mean, all of them sort of kind of put it to that sort of idea that whatever is there is intelligent. It's controlling how everything works, and they don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
Because if the experience that you're experiencing is catered to you, and you're also having an experience, and you're having something different happen at the same time, what is it?
And it
just confounds everything.
Yeah, and then the person next to you they're also having experience, but their experience alone may be completely different.
Right. So by the time you're done, you've got like 3 different stories or 3 different accounts that don't make any sense when you try to put them all down as to this event occurred right now and we all seen a UFO.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I just do not, I disagree with a little bit is how this article ends with, Fugel's team for the TV show has documented the inexplicable activity that is once again spiking in the Uinta Basin.
Yeah.
And this is why we're encouraging you to read the book and watch the other stuff, because the stuff that's on the show, while some of it has been really interesting, it's not as incredible as these previous experiences. And I don't know.
So you're okay.
Yeah.
You should tell everybody you're talking about Brandon Fugel, who basically he is a Utah businessman. From what we understand, he bought the ranch and he's funding his own scientific study, which is the show that's on television, I believe. What's the show called? SkinWalker Ranch?
The Hunt for SkinWalker Ranch or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
So there actually is a television show that you can watch, and that's what sort of spurred the whole conversation we had on our live stream where somebody asked about it. Because we said that the show was probably going to come back for a second season, and the idea was that there was even more evidence that occurred after the fact than what was in the very first season of the SkinWalker Ranch show.
Yeah.
And we were hoping that, well, good, maybe they'll actually have something. Now, the show, to its credit, is doing what it's supposed to do, and there was an instance of possible cattle death. It's not necessarily mutilation, and there's some general weirdness going on, and there was supposed to be a high-in-the-sky UFO that was sitting there, and they had weird energy fluctuations and readings, but, for us, well, I should say for me, because I don't necessarily want to speak for you. It wasn't on the same caliber or same par as some of the things that we had read and seen from before.
To the point where because we were familiar with the previous instances and previous experiences, it was almost, some episodes just weren't engaging.
Yeah.
At all. And I mean, there were a couple ones where like you were just not into it. Yeah. And I was kind of interested, especially with like the one dude having near radiation poisoning symptoms.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting, especially when the radiation left. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know, but overall, you know, I'm expecting these people to go out there and like be ripped apart like a horror movie, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, okay, so from what we expected more, basically. Yeah. Now, at the same time, to be completely realistic, if we were dropped on that ranch to do investigations, we would probably do it the same way these guys are doing it, and we'd probably have the same results.
Yeah.
You know, because it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. So the idea of SkinWalker Ranch and so getting some general information behind it, if you haven't done any kind of research at all and you'd like to, we put a link in the show notes so that you can go check it out. Watch the movie. If you want to read the book, read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we like George Knapp.
Yes.
So a lot of times in the past, he's done a bunch of coast to coast, Bob Lazar interviews. So, I mean, he's, I like him. I think he's serious business, and he's one of these investigators, and he's on TV, man. He does this stuff in the news. I think it's kind of a rarity, really. You know, he is a UFO nut job in the news. You know what I mean? In Vegas.
Yeah.
But the Mystery Hour website's pretty nice. So mysterywire.com.
Yeah.
And you can kind of check it out. So if the show comes back, you should probably watch the show. So anyway, there you go. Yeah. And we do have a theory about energy. And a lot of the energy is that they're experiencing radioactivity. And I personally think the radioactivity is coming from all the bombs they dropped in Nevada. You know, that uranium and a lot of that dirty bomb product of exploding old nuclear weapons doesn't just go away. It floats on the air, settles, sits in the dirt. And eventually, if you go around and kick it up long enough, you will reactivate it, if you will, because it doesn't really go away. In other words, you re-expose the radiation that's there. And then you wind up exposing yourself to it. So, kind of is a thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Kind of a thing. So we'll see. Hopefully, if they have a season 2 and they come across more crazy adventures and investigation things that may occur, like, maybe they'll be able to take some investigation ideas from other places and implement new technology, or maybe do it a little bit differently. I think that'd be kind of cool, because I think the way they did it in the first season, honestly, was a little bit too narrow in scope.
Yeah.
Because you would think with the history of the ranch and all the stuff that they tried, that just setting up random cameras and doing all that stuff is probably not going to cut it, man. I
mean, but to satisfy my curiosity would be an incredible amount of effort, because I'd expect a team of like 12 people, you know, and I'd expect 4 of them to be constantly watching like 300 cameras set up at every angle all over the property.
Yeah.
Non-stop.
Thermal detectors.
Yeah.
Motion detectors.
I mean, they had the
sound recorder. I would want it all. And then, you know, I think that was a lot of what was alluded to in the past, that when the government was there investigating, they used all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'd expect parabolic mics at every angle, especially the closer you get to that ridgeline.
Yeah.
You know? The sightings that did appear on the TV show with the light emitting out of the mesa.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been a perfect opportunity to have a stationary parabolic mic right there, because that would dispute or support like mountain peak disruption.
Yeah.
So, or dispersion.
But see, I do think that some of that stuff that they tag it as being unknown because they don't know what it is, and that's the correct tag. You know, I don't know what it is, so it's unknown. But some of the stuff, like for example, with the light beam going off, and like, whoa, what is that? You know, for your birthday, I bought you a green laser.
Yeah.
It has all sorts of patterns built into it, and you can create one of these crazy beams if you're on the side of a hill somewhere too.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot there that could be explained away, and that's okay. You know, but we have a certain amount of skepticity Is that a word?
Skepticism.
Yep. Skepticism. So I wanted more to go. You know what I wanted? I wanted that sort of tickle in the back of the neck. Whoa.
Yeah.
Didn't get it. But it's still good to maybe do a little research on your own. Or don't. Just watch the show. It's really up to you.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you what to do. If you don't like it, turn channel. Except for the podcast. Don't turn the channel to podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, listen, follow, all that good stuff because we appreciate it. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think we're at the point where I'm done.
Okay.
I'm talking for quite a while. So it is what it is. So, like I was saying before, we do have all the links on the podcast. If you want to kind of check it out and peruse it at your leisure, we do have a Facebook page.
CreepGeeks Podcast.
Where we talk about stuff there, too.
And we also have a Facebook group. We are trying to grow that group. So right now, it's a lot of lighthearted, fun stuff, including some Bigfoot memes. But it's an open place for discussion. If you want to ask us a question, share an experience, or give us a show suggestion, visit our Facebook group. That's going to be CreepGeeks Facebook group. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. This Patreon supported episode is brought to us by Dave, Adam, James, Bobby, John and John, and Isis.
Yeah.
Again, show notes have links to everything, including our online shop and our website.
There you go. Any comments, questions, concerns, let us know.
Yep. Contact at creepgeeks.com.
Yes. All right. So anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the CreepGeeks Podcast, episode number 197. 198 is coming up next, and there you go. So tune in every week because we're here.
Yeah.
Talking about stuff that you might find to be interesting. So anyway, see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, we're reaching out to you about your vehicle's extended warranty options. Please respond.